Hi, welcome to my channel. Now we uncover the untold story of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, the day the world saw the atom split. On the morning of August 6, 1945, the world entered a terrifying new age, the age of nuclear weapons. For the first time in history, humankind witnessed the unimaginable power of a split atom, unleashed not in a laboratory, but on a city filled with people. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima, and 3 days later on Nagasaki, didn't just end World War II, it changed the course of human civilization forever. The world before the bomb. By mid-1945, World War II had been raging for almost 6 years. In Europe, Nazi Germany had already surrendered in May, following Adolf Hitler's suicide in his Berlin bunker. The Allied powers celebrated victory, but in the Pacific, the war still burned fiercely. The Empire of Japan, led by Emperor Hirohito, refused to surrender despite facing massive losses. Japanese forces were still fighting brutally across Asia and the Pacific Islands, even as their cities burned under American air raids. The U.S. military knew that invading Japan's mainland would cost millions of lives, both American and Japanese. So American scientists and leaders began to consider a devastating alternative. The Manhattan Project, birth of the atomic bomb. In 1939, years before the war's end, a group of scientists, many of them refugees from Europe, warned that Nazi Germany might be developing a weapon of unimaginable power, an atomic bomb. Responding to that threat, the U.S. government launched a top-secret research effort called the Manhattan Project. It brought together some of the brightest minds of the 20th century, including physicists like J. Robert Oppenheimer, Enrico Fermi, and Niels Bohr. Their goal was simple but terrifying: to split the atom and release the immense energy hidden within it. Over the next 6 years, in secret labs across the U.S., especially Los Alamos, New Mexico, they worked tirelessly. By July 1945, their efforts culminated in the first successful atomic explosion during the Trinity test in the desert of New Mexico. When Oppenheimer saw the blinding light of the explosion, he remembered a verse from the Hindu scripture Bhagavad Gita: "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The weapon worked. The question now was, should it be used? The decision to drop the bomb. President Harry S. Truman faced an agonizing decision. Truman, who had become U.S. president after Franklin D. Roosevelt's death. In April 1945, faced one of the hardest decisions in history. The options were grim. 1. Invade Japan and risk millions of casualties. 2. Or use the new weapon and force Japan to surrender immediately. American military estimates suggested that a land invasion could cost up to 1 million Allied lives. Japan had already ignored calls to surrender, including the Potsdam Declaration issued by the Allies in July 1945. Truman ultimately decided that using the atomic bomb would end the war faster and save lives in the long run, though at a terrible cost. Target: Hiroshima. Hiroshima, a city of about 350,000 people, was chosen as the first target. It was a major military center and had been largely untouched by earlier bombings, making it perfect to demonstrate the bomb's full destructive power. At 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets, dropped an atomic bomb nicknamed Little Boy. The bomb fell silently for 43 seconds before exploding 580 meters, 1,900 feet above the city. In an instant, a flash brighter than the sun lit up the morning sky. The destruction of Hiroshima. Within seconds, the temperature at ground zero reached over 4,000 Celsius, 7,000 Fahrenheit. Everything within a 2-kilometer radius was vaporized. Buildings, trees, vehicles, and people. The blast wave flattened almost every structure in the city. Glass melted, steel twisted, and shadows of people were burned into the ground where they stood. An estimated 70,000 people died instantly. Tens of thousands more suffered horrific burns and radiation sickness. The survivors, known as hibakusha, wandered through the ruins, their skin peeling, clothes burned away, calling for water and loved ones who would never answer. Firestorms raged for hours, and radioactive fallout spread silently through the air, poisoning everything it touched. Japan's reaction. Despite the unimaginable destruction of Hiroshima, the Japanese government still refused to surrender immediately. Some leaders argued that it was a single event and that the Americans could not possibly have more atomic bombs. But the U.S. had already prepared the second. The second bomb, Nagasaki. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, a second B-29 bomber, Boxcar, took off, carrying another atomic bomb, codenamed Fat Man. The original target was the city of Kokura, but heavy clouds obscured the view. The plane turned toward its secondary target, Nagasaki, a port city surrounded by mountains and home to around 250,000 people. At 11:02 a.m., the bomb exploded over Nagasaki with a force equivalent to 22,000 tons of TNT. Although the city's terrain limited the spread of destruction somewhat, the results were still catastrophic. Approximately 40,000 people died instantly, and by the end of the year, total deaths exceeded 70,000 due to injuries and radiation effects. The surrender of Japan. The twin bombings, combined with the Soviet Union's declaration of war on Japan on August 8, finally broke the will of Japan's leaders. Emperor Hirohito made a historic radio address to his people, saying, "The enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which is incalculable. We must endure the unendurable and suffer what is insufferable." It was the first time the Japanese people had ever heard their emperor's voice. The war that had claimed over 60 million lives was finally over. Bring the aftermath, cities of shadows. When Allied teams entered Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the bombings, they were met with a scene from another world. Entire neighborhoods had vanished, leaving only rubble and ash. Bodies lay unburied. Rivers ran black, and survivors bore burns shaped like the patterns of their clothes. Radiation sickness began to claim more lives. Hair loss, vomiting, internal bleeding, and cancer became common among survivors for years afterward. The psychological trauma was equally deep. The bombings left generations scarred, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Yet from the ashes of devastation, the survivors' stories became powerful calls for peace. The world reacts. News of the atomic bomb shocked the world. Some saw it as a necessary evil that ended the war. Others saw it as the beginning of humanity's potential self-destruction. World leaders and scientists debated the morality of using such a weapon. Albert Einstein, whose letter to Roosevelt had helped start the Manhattan Project, later expressed regret. "Had I known that the Germans would not succeed in developing an atomic bomb, I would have done nothing." Many of the scientists who created the bomb, including Oppenheimer, began advocating for international control of nuclear weapons, fearing what might come next. Rebuilding Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After the war, Hiroshima and Nagasaki faced immense challenges. Both cities were reduced to ruins, but Japan's government and citizens showed remarkable resilience. With international aid and determination, Hiroshima was rebuilt as a city of peace, with the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park established at Ground Zero. The preserved ruins of the Genbaku Dome, atomic bomb dome, stand today as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a haunting reminder of the tragedy. Nagasaki, too, rebuilt itself as a center for peace and cultural remembrance, housing the strong Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum and peace monuments from nations worldwide. The dawn of the nuclear age. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki didn't just end a war. They began a new global era. Nations realized that if one bomb could destroy an entire city, the next war might destroy the planet. This fear led to the Cold War, a decades-long nuclear arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union. Countries rushed to build their own nuclear arsenals, resulting in thousands of bombs, each many times more powerful than those dropped in 1945. The doctrine of strong, mutually assured destruction became a grim guarantee of peace. If both sides could destroy each other completely, neither would dare to strike first. Legacy and lessons. Shonken. More than 200,000 people ultimately died from the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, many instantly, others over years for radiation and illness. But their suffering sparked one of humanity's most powerful movements, the demand for peace and nuclear disarmament. Every year, on August 6th and August 9th, memorial ceremonies are held in both cities, where bells ring, lanterns float on rivers, and survivors share their stories with the world. Their message is simple yet eternal. Never again. Conclusion. The day the world saw the atom split, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were more than acts of war. They were warnings to the future. They revealed both the brilliance and the horror of human invention. In that moment, the world saw that mankind held the power not only to shape life, but to end it. The cities that once burned now stand as beacons of peace, teaching each generation the same timeless truth. When we destroy others, we destroy ourselves. Finally, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this World History Facts Hub channel.